Shalom, and welcome back to Bnei Noach Academy, Thoughts on the Torah. Please remember to hit the like button, to subscribe, and most importantly, to share this insight and inspiration with friends and family. When you look at the book of Exodus, chapter 22, verses 20 through 23, the Torah is warning us against hurting a stranger, a foreigner, a widow, an orphan. Typically, they all fit into the same category. People who are a little downtrodden, people who are, as it is, are not going through the easiest of times. And typically, it's in human nature, sadly, that is the bad side of us, to want to pounce on them. They're very vulnerable. They're easy targets. It's easy to bully them. And typically, they don't even have who to stand up for them, to fight for their rights. And that's where sometimes the ugliness can come out. And God warns us against it. First of all, he tells us, remember, don't do this, because you yourself were gerim, were foreigners, were strangers in the land of Egypt. You know what it feels like. And this is also part of the human, I want to say the human experience, the human phenomenon. That sometimes people go through a problem. They know how it feels. They know how hard and painful it feels. And yet, when they get to a somewhat of a better place, they easily forget. They perpetrate the very same misbehavior, even crimes, that they experience and that hurt them so much in the past. And that's what God is telling us. Don't go there. Don't fall into that bad side of human behavior. On the contrary, you should make sure, because of your experience, because you know how difficult it is, because you know how hard it feels to go through it, to be extra sensitive, to be extra compassionate, even to overcompensate with kindness and gentleness. However, God tells us if you don't, this is so severe, there is no excuse for this. You can't hide behind the fact that this is quote unquote human behavior or the nature of the human being. No, this is something that you could control, you should control, and you better control, God says. Because if you don't, says God, they look like they have no advocate. It seems like they have no one to stand up for them. Oh, yes, they do. Someone very big and mighty. That's me, says God. If they scream out to me, if they're in agony, they're in pain, they're being oppressed, they call out to me, I'm going to fight their fight. I'm going to stand up for their rights. But it's going to be very, very ugly. So ugly, he says, I am going to, quote, kill you by the sword. Very miserable way to die. And your wives will be widows and your children orphans. And of course, the sages point out the obvious. Of course, the question is, what does this mean? If one dies by sword, then obviously, automatically, if he's married, his wife becomes a widow and his children become orphans. Why the need for the Torah to emphasize it, to spell it out, to spell out the obvious? The answer is, God says, it's not just going to be just an open and shut case of someone dies, okay, it's sad, the family knows and understands that he is gone, and they have their quote-unquote closure because they have literally a body. They're able to do a funeral. They're able to say their goodbyes. They're able to have that peace of mind knowing that their loved one, although he's dead, but now he is in a better place, he is safe, and they're able to move on with their lives because they had that proper closure. But imagine they don't. Imagine they remain figurative widows and orphans for the rest of their life because they don't know. You die by the sword, at least figuratively, but they never get to have that moment of closure. It's somewhere out there, no witnesses. The wife remains in limbo. According to Jewish law, if a woman doesn't know with certainty and it cannot be proven that her husband is dead, she can never remarry. So she remains like a widow for the rest of her life. The children remain fatherless. They don't have a father, but they don't know what happened to the father. That is a terrible punishment. And all this for what? God says, because you don't mess with those who are down on their luck. You don't oppress the weak. You don't take advantage of the vulnerable. That is a very, very severe transgression in the eyes of God. And so too, it should be in our eyes. Always be kind to those who have less than us. Always be extra benevolent to those who are less fortunate